it would be really helpful to know kind of who you are, where you're from, and kind of, I guess, what you want to get out of this session. And obviously, please feel free to put any questions that you do have in the chat. So as an organisation, we provide travel assistance to families. So we're the sponsor, has refugee status in the UK, and they are entitled to bring over their family to join them. That'll be dependent family members. We would provide travel assistance for that to happen. For refugees to be eligible to bring over family members, there is a visa application process, so they require an entry visa to come to the UK. And it's kind of similar to the asylum claim process. There's quite a lot of paperwork that goes with that, and a kind of a long application process. And currently waiting times on those visas are around 12 months, so quite a significant wait for family to get those entry visas after someone has got refugee status. We are primarily set up to provide travel assistance, which is kind of bringing the family to the UK when they've got the visas, but we've very much, let's say, expanded, kind of, I guess, developed our service to also offer support with those kind of visa application costs, because we're aware that that forms a massive barrier to some families being able to reunite, and then also providing support for refugees families once they're in the UK as well. So what we have seen with our families is that I think increasingly, and this has kind of changed, I guess, since we started. We've been running for 13 years now. And we cover the whole of the UK, so including Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales. We've seen that families are increasingly unprepared for the financial impact of being reunited. I think, as I'm sure you'll all have seen, it's increasingly difficult for refugees in the UK. People have been stuck in that asylum seeking stage for a lot longer, and they're not kind of in a financial position to kind of to make the application for the visas, or to bring the family here kind of practically when it comes to that. We're also seeing that there is a reduction in face-to-face services. Obviously everyone is overwhelmed, and we completely understand that, which means that when we originally set up around 2010, kind of that first 5 years, we were seeing a lot of people that were coming to us through a referral organisation. So they had some support, they tended to be more settled and kind of more embedded in kind of accessing support services locally. When kind of, I guess, probably since the pandemic, people are increasingly coming to us, and we're the only source of support for them. We're also finding that people are finding a lot of kind of surprises in the family reunion process. So they're not aware of the requirements to fund TB testing, to fund DNA testing in some cases, the kind of extensive costs of travelling to visa application centres. It's all kind of coming as a bit of a shock, which is then making it more difficult for them to actually access support and be aware of what support's available. But in some cases, kind of really stalling the application and causing kind of unnecessary additional stress for the family. There's a lot of text on this slide. Sorry, I got a bit carried away with my case study with the detail in it. This is, you'll see, you can read through this, but it's just a typical kind of case for us. And this is kind of a best case scenario position. So in this is a case where nothing has gone wrong. He hasn't had to reapply, he hasn't had to make multiple trips to the visa application centre, but the costs rack up for families really quickly. Whilst the application process, like other immigration processes for family reunion, the application process is technically free in that there's no fee to the Home Office. The actual process of things like paying for passports in some countries can be really costly, the travel to get the passports, all of those costs quickly rack up and can kind of quickly reach thousands of pounds even for small families with fairly straightforward applications. And what we tend to see with families is they're kind of using up all of their financial, I guess, capital at the beginning. So whether that's their own savings whilst they're supporting families, whether that's borrowing from friends and family, or whether that's kind of accessing other grants from other organisations, where they might kind of only be allowed one application as well. So people are kind of often coming to us having used up all those resources, things like the refugee reintegration grant, they might have used all those up by the time they come to us. And some of that is maybe that money could have been used better if they'd been more aware of the kind of all the steps in the process from the beginning. which is what we're quite keen to pick up on with people. Does anyone have any questions at this stage before I move on to the kind of what we've produced and how we're responding to this? Yeah. Okay. So calling this an opportunity feels, oh sorry, there's a couple of questions. If it all goes smoothly, how long does it take? That is a great question. I'm not sure I'd really be able to define smoothly. I guess in reality, it's difficult to access legal advice, but if you were very lucky, you maybe have an advisor that could help you do it in 3 months. You know, the Home Office tell us it takes 9 months now to an application, but we've got people waiting 12, 14 months. So I think a year is a realistic expectation if it goes smoothly, and often it doesn't. I think is the reality of it. What delays can be caused are kind of there's delays around the finances, which make it take a lot longer. So where people are waiting to get money to do various things, so they're kind of scrabbling to get money together to make appointments. The delays in accessing legal advice is obviously really significant. And also the delays in things like waiting for appointments at these application centres and then arranging travel. So there's lots of things that can kind of hold it up by a couple of weeks, or a week, even a week, and that they kind of all rack up over the process, and then you're kind of waiting on the Home Office to make the decision as well. So yes, going to go that's this slide. So calling it an opportunity feels really horrible because it's not. It's a terrible thing that is affecting families really badly. But what we are seeing is that the Home Office have changed the kind of estimated decision-making time from 3 months to 9 months, which is meaning that families are they're aware that the family union is kind of imminent earlier. So they've kind of got a bit more, I guess, more lead-in time to start thinking about some of those things. We also, the delays in the asylum system mean that people kind of have the opportunity in some cases to kind of make more links in the UK and I guess be more accessing more services where they are available. And that's obviously a big caveat, but I think there is more opportunity for kind of be reaching people earlier and talking about the realities of family reunion with them earlier, so they can kind of manage expectations and start thinking about those longer term implications. You do have to have a lawyer. This is not my area, so I'm going to say that I think you need to have legal support. So you can submit your family reunion application yourself, obviously, as an individual, but most clients would have legal support to do that. The legal aid question is tricky because I don't think it might be outside the scope of legal aid, but don't quote me on that because again, it's not my area. So we tend to see people who are being referred by a lawyer, which I'm guessing must come from legal aid, or that they've already got the visas in place. The one opportunity that we really see, actually, which really came out for us over the pandemic when we were working much more directly with people when the face-to-face services were closed, is the amazing networks and people kind of sharing information within communities. So during the pandemic, we went from kind of maybe 10% of our applications being self-referrals to kind of 90+% being self-referrals. So it's a real shift in the way that we were working with families, and also a real shift in the way that we could then start to identify those patterns where people had kind of passed on our details through word of mouth. And what we could see is that you could see some themes and kind of bad advice circulating in communities, so people getting the wrong end of the stick and coming to us with problems that didn't exist because they've been told about by certain friends about them. So kind of you could begin to see those patterns. And what we saw there was an opportunity for us to kind of, I guess, get some good word of mouth advice going around and really start to kind of use those networks that we were building up to share information within those communities. And it's a series of resources that are based on the rationale of kind of increasing that baseline knowledge of people around the family reunion process. So our target audience for these resources is very much people at the start of the process. Obviously, they can be picked up at any point in the process, but ideally, we would want them to be shared with people who are still seeking asylum that will have family to be reunited with. I think it's very much about managing expectations, making sure people have got the most accurate information at the start of the process, and also that they kind of, I guess, are aware of the expectations that are going to be on them, the limitations of third sector support. We're also really aware that the kind of mechanism for sharing this information was really key, and the resources have been produced so they can be shared quite easily on on other channels that we see clients using a lot, so things like WhatsApp and messaging apps. They also kind of respond to, I guess, what we've seen from clients in terms of how they work through the process, and they're very kind of in the response to the stress and the trauma of the situation, how things are dealt with very incrementally, and actually it's quite difficult to shift conversation for those longer term expectations and longer term planning because people are taking one hurdle at a time. So we try to kind of lay it out in a way that is very straightforward and has those kind of, what stage are you in, what do you need to be doing, and kind of put that all on the table at once, acknowledging that it's going to be difficult for quite a lot of people to actually take all that information in that way, but I think to have something that you can kind of come back to and reference while you're in that point in the process. So what we've produced is a series of short videos that are kind of intended to be shared on social media. They outline the family reunion processes and what is required of you at each stage, and they give that kind of overview of the process. We then link to advice which provides more detail on our website and guidance on other services. So it's very much that we're aiming to share these, for clients to be able to share these videos with other clients, and we're very much aware that word of mouth is something we're looking to or to kind of use as an opportunity there. And also linking to resources, additional resources we've got that are slightly more in depth, which I'll come on to later. And I'm going to attempt to do the video, which worked fine in our practice, so fingers crossed it's going to come out again. There is going to be thumbs up, someone can hear that, because I'm not sure that everyone else can hear it, so just let me know whether you can hear that. Okay, that would be great.
Hello, this is Sarah from Together Now. In this short video, we will give you some quick information on refugee family reunion. This information is for those who have been granted refugee status and those who have applied for asylum before the 28th of June 2022, when the Nationality and Borders Act came into force. If you have applied for asylum after the 28th of June 2022, there is restricted access to family reunion, and you will need to contact your immigration solicitor for advice. Prepare, plan, reunite. Prepare for your family reunion application. There are lots of costs associated with applying for family reunion visas. These include getting legal advice, make sure your solicitor is OISC qualified, interpreting and translation. You will need to pay for these during your solicitor's appointments. Passports and birth certificates. Apply in advance as they will take time. DNA testing. Not required, but can strengthen your family's application. TB test certificates. They cost between $50 and $150 per person. Travel to appointments. For your family, this will be at extra cost. Gathering all this information can take several months. Plan for their arrival. When your application is submitted, you need to be ready for your family's arrival. You need to consider flight booking. You might need to book yourself or ask a refugee charity for support. Exit visas or permits. Check in advance at departure airport. Where you will live after they arrive. Speak to your local refugee charity for support. What money you will live on before benefits start. You might need to ask for grants from charities and your community support. How your family will get to the airport for their flight. Your family might need your community support. How you will get your family home from the airport. Flights arrive late at night or early morning. This can take a long time to plan, and you may need help. Reunite with your family. When your family are here, there will be lots to do. This might include collecting their BRP cards or arranging redelivery. There is currently a Home Office delay in BRP cards being issued. Finding your family English lessons, also known as ESOL. Speak to local refugee charities for the latest information. Enrolling your children in school or college. The local educational authority will need to be notified. Applying for benefits for your family. There can be delays in getting universal credit. Registering with doctors, also known as GPs. It can take time, so register soon after arrival. Helping your family to build community contacts and adjusting to life in the UK. This will be a stressful time for your family. There are organisations who can help if needed. For further information, please visit Together Now's resource page. Prepare, plan, reunite. Together Now, reuniting refugee families.
So that's obviously an example of one of the films there. As you can see, it's a very brief overview that kind of touches on a lot of areas that could be quite in depth, but it kind of gives a kind of, I guess, a hint of what you might need to be considering. I think obviously each case is very different. So things like the travel to the departure airport, for some people that's a kind of $50 bus ride. For some people it's £2,000 worth of flights. So it's really difficult to kind of I guess we don't want to scare people early on in the process and for them to think it's unacceptable. We just want to make sure that people are kind of aware of those potential obstacles and start thinking about what's going to be required of them and to organise themselves as a family. I can see a couple of you are kind of from more kind of therapeutic organisations. We try really hard. I think it's in this process. I think the financial stress kind of really goes alongside this, managing people's expectations about what the reality of family reunion is. And I think it says at the end, this could be a stressful time for your family. I think people find it really hard to envisage what that's going to look like and that it is going to be stressful. And that's actually coupled with the financial shock of kind of having them arrive in the UK when you've got no money left is really difficult for families, and it kind of creates a lot of stress, particularly for the arriving spouse who's maybe not as aware of those issues. So part of this is very much around making sure that everyone is kind of, I guess, prepared for it to not go quite as they envisage, and that stress is going to kind of impact on the rest of the reunion and those outcomes after they arrive in the UK as well. So those films are available on our website and on YouTube, obviously sharing English, Arabic and French and Farsi and Spanish, I think by the end of May. So we are looking to kind of meet that need in terms of language. We're looking at kind of Tigrinya and Amharic in translations as well. So as part of our kind of commitment, I guess, to working with refugees to design our services and working with our clients, we obviously have kind of been through this with our clients and kind of talked about their expectations and what they thought this could offer to them. I think the people that we have talked to have said, oh, that would have been really helpful to have. Now the challenge for us is very much about how we get it to people early in that process, so they are seeing it when they're perhaps still in that asylum seeking stage, so they kind of, I guess, starting to kind of have those thoughts about how they are going to actually do this in practice. An additional tool that's very much linked to this on our website is a checklist for families to go through. We understand this is a really intimidating thing because it lays out all of the potential costs that you're going to face when you're going through the process, and if you add it all up, you can, again, say you can quickly reach thousands of pounds, which is obviously really off-putting for people. This is very much designed to be gone through kind of with someone who's offering you support rather than necessarily doing it independently. I don't know why those words have gone beside the page there. I think it's really important to note, and it does say that on the documentation that you're not going to be expected to pay all these costs at once. So it might be kind of £100 here and then £300 there, but it does need considering about where you are using up the sources of larger support. I think just kind of on the costs, I had one family that were kind of hitting £15,000 for the amount they spent on the family reunion. And I've got another who haven't got the visas yet, but they probably spent £7,000 going to and from the visa application centre because it's in a different country. They're unaccompanied minors and they require someone to fly with them every time. So it can easily rack up, and it very much depends on that client's situation. If you're living in, say, Tehran, or that's a bad example, you're living in a city that helps, because obviously you can access things like TB testing clinics more easily. If you were living in a city with a visa application centre, that is also obviously very helpful because you haven't got those costs. Another really key consideration, which I guess isn't covered in the financial side is about where your family are exposed to risk. So are they exposed to risk through travelling to the visa centre? Are they travelling through areas where there might be fighting, or are they bringing themselves to the kind of attention of authorities they might want to be avoiding? And there's all these, I think we obviously focus on the cost because that's what we do, but we understand that these conversations are going to start to draw out some of those more difficult conversations about the practicalities and about the impact on families. So the offer that we make to organisations, and we've already done for a few organisations, is obviously absolutely feel free to use anything that's on our website and to change it and to copy and paste bits and pieces of it. We are not at all precious about anything we produce. So anything you want to steal or take or rebrand or do whatever you need to do with it, we are absolutely fine with that. We just really want all that kind of knowledge that we built up to, or not we built up, our clients have built up to be used and to kind of be used the most effectively, really. We're also really happy to speak to staff as a kind of Q&A on the specific situations your clients might be in, or obviously not advising on legal casework, but kind of more like as a service, what you're offering, that way you might be coming across people that are in this situation, identifying them earlier. And so we're happy to kind of come and speak to staff as a training session, or to kind of answer questions that they might have about family reunion. Just on the offer, sorry, I think that's a couple of questions as well. We don't offer legal advice, and that is where we draw the line. So we're not legal advisors, and we're not qualified to offer it. So obviously we wouldn't be doing that. And you would obviously need to have that OASC qualification to be offering that advice. So we don't do that, so we wouldn't want to overstep on that. Malika, is it okay if I pick up the questions? Is that?
Yep, absolutely.
Natalie, I think you've asked what's the best way for unaccompanied children to face family members. The only way that I know that's kind of a formal tracing service is the Red Cross tracing service. So that's the one we kind of, we would always refer to them in that instance. I think they've got the biggest reach. Red Cross do family reunion, so they offer travel assistance and they offer legal support in some areas, and they also have a post-arrival kind of integration program for families that they bring over. They have set criteria, so we kind of split the criteria down the middle, so that they help families that have 3 people or more, or unaccompanied children, and we would help if they family had less than 3 people travelling. The Red Cross couldn't support in the timeframes that were required, or where they've met their quota for that area, because they kind of have quarterly quotas that they worked. So we are in regular contact about who's helping which case, where there are families that are blurred, but they offer that service to kind of larger families, and they work slightly differently to us, but essentially it's the same service.
I think there are just a couple other questions near the bottom of the chat if you've got them there.
I think we covered you have to have a lawyer. I think someone else has picked up the legal aid question. I would say that we have seen clients that have tried to make the application themselves with mixed success. Obviously, it will save you potentially time waiting for legal advice if you do it yourself, but it's quite a complex application to make, and it's almost like it's essentially like submitting a new case. Some of the evidence needs to be there and to be correct. So we wouldn't necessarily recommend that people would do that, and we would normally signpost the law centres or the Red Cross where they have those advice services. Does family reunion include parents of adult refugees? Again, this is kind of bridging into the legal advice. It can, so actually very relevant, because this his name then this guy here and his dad did come over on refugee family reunion, but it's I believe it's an outside the rules different kind of application. So again, it would be more specialised advice they would need to do that, and I think there needs to be kind of compelling, compassionate circumstances for that to happen. Is a DNA test a must? Again, kind of bridging legal advice, my understanding is it's not a must, and it actually really shouldn't be required. We have quite strict criteria, so it would support, in most cases it would support, it kind of supports the documents. Obviously having that kind of very clear evidence of that familiar relationship is really helpful for a case. Obviously we can't afford to fund it for everybody, so we are really careful about either whether an application's been refused on the basis of they haven't been able to prove the relationship, or whether key documents are just not available to the family, or kind of specific scenarios, I guess, where DNA testing is specifically required, and the legal advisor has kind of validated that application. Advice on family reunion for Sudanese refugees. I've just sent a very stroppy tweet about Sudanese refugees, a particular bugbear. So I think I've seen that the government today have suggested that family reunion is a route for Sudanese refugees to leave Sudan, which is not quite as true as far as I can see. The visa application centre in Khartoum is closed. The Red Cross aren't operating out of Sudan. I mean, it's not a viable route. It takes a year to apply. It's not a viable route for people that are trying to flee if you are working with Sudanese clients who have the family reunion visas, there are some routes out of Sudan. I'm not sure how particularly safe they are, but I guess not safe to be in Sudan either. We've had clients that have left via Cairo, via Jeddah, and via Ethiopia, but there are kind of very set requirements for some of those countries on entry. So Jeddah require a client to have an ongoing flight booked, and they're only allowed to be in the airport for 10 hours. So it's kind of, for each case, there's a very specific set of needs that we would look at. But I mean, yeah, the idea that family reunion is a route out is kind of quite unrealistic. And obviously you've got the limitations on who can apply for family reunion. So again, parents, older children are going to be, parents and adult children are going to be more difficult to apply for. Thank you someone else for answering the question about the unaccompanied minors. Family reunion policies in place for Ukrainian refugees. As far as I understand, because Ukrainian refugees have a different system, they can come over as a family, so it's not quite the same where we're getting people. So a lot of our clients that would come over would be making those kind of arriving as single person, so the kind of usually the head of the household, so the father or the husband would arrive on their own, kind of either making that journey across the channel or kind of other risky journeys to reach the UK. So I guess they're more likely to have left family behind in that situation, whereas I guess Ukrainian families can come as a whole. So as far as I'm aware, we haven't worked with any Ukrainian families just because it's not quite within the, I guess, the process that we're working with. So I don't think it's an issue for Ukrainian families in quite the same way. If you do want to take a look at the website, you've obviously. Thank you for someone else for answering that question. But like I say, I think it's not there because it wouldn't be required. It wouldn't be required in the same way as it would be for other countries, because of the way that people have entered the UK. Where can we update on families are coming from? Where in the UK they are being reunited? Do you mean? So clarification for that question. So I guess most of the clients that and I think the Red Cross work with are kind of from the main, I guess, refugee producing countries, so Sudan, Iran, Eritrea, the kind of obvious ones. We have massive kind of concentrations of clients in obviously London, Manchester, Glasgow, kind of secondarily kind of Birmingham, Belfast, and Leeds, Newcastle. But I guess we mainly work with people in those major population centres. I guess my follow-up question would be, why would it be helpful for you to know where they are? Because are you offering something to them, or whether there's an offer that you're kind of looking to pursue there? But again, yeah, we would mainly see people in the major cities, really. I think that's just the volume of people that can look there, or that would actually try and get there as well. What we do see is actually that we are, because we're working on that word of mouth basis, we do see kind of concentrations of, for example, the two men there, Syrian clients in Cardiff, or Eritrean families in Birmingham, or Sudanese families in Manchester. It's kind of, we see concentrations because we are being passed on through word of mouth, so it's more likely to get kind of thematics, thematic kind of groupings of people that probably doesn't accurately represent the full need. Let's say Ukrainians have different systems, they can come on their own. We don't, in terms of a presence, we cover the whole of the UK and we work completely remotely. So we have currently a few families on the go in Liverpool, and we are happy to support them. We will take referrals from across the UK, like I said, including kind of Scotland, Wales and Belfast, the whole of Northern Ireland, generally Belfast. I'm going to do a little plug for another organisation I'm involved with, because in terms of your legal questions, there's some really good resources on the Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit website. So they have quite a lot of guides on the more, obviously they're offering legal advice on the kind of legal side of things. So obviously they wouldn't take clients from outside the Northwest and have kind of long waiting lists, but if you want there's kind of summary guides on their website as well. Recurring challenges we find in that area of work. Housing is my today's challenge. I think it's the post-arrival issues, really, because I think, like I said, people work through the process very incrementally, and they suddenly find themselves at the airport in Manchester or wherever without any housing, and they haven't really engaged with conversations about what they need to do about that. And I think it can be there's often a very high expectation of the arriving family, and the sponsor hasn't always necessarily been quite realistic with them around that. So we have produced specifically some welcome packs for aimed at the arriving family, which kind of say these things might be a bit tricky actually when you arrive, and here's what you'll need to be doing. So everyone in the family is aware of the difficulties they are going to face, but in a kind of a soft touch, like don't in a kind of don't come here, it's going to be awful kind of way, but actually just, you know, there's going to be a reality when you get here where you're not going to get mainstream benefits for quite a long time because it takes a while to apply, and just kind of managing some of those expectations. I think that the recurring challenge is very much about that not being able to plan through the next stage, which is why we're trying to do more work on the resources we're providing for people. But yeah, housing is absolutely a massive challenge. Even when there's children involved, we can't always get the local authority to accommodate them. We find that there are less obviously there's less housing availability and services for couples, so people and families without children struggle slightly more to get to access support because they haven't got those kind of links into statutory services and some charities as well. And I think really it's the financial, what we really see is that financial impact. So that, you know, when you are at the airport and you've just arrived and you've got no money, and actually you can't even get to your friend's house to kind of go and wait while you try and hear from housing, and you just come completely paralysed by being in debt from the process. And the kind of weight of that expectation is what we really see causing a problem for families. I guess the other kind of ongoing issue is around the access to other services. So obviously the access to housing is tricky. No one can access housing at the moment. You know, delays in benefits, waiting lists for other organisations to provide support, and it's just, I mean, it's just terrible for everyone at the moment, isn't it? So I don't think our challenges are particularly different to other organisations and what you'd be seeing in the kind of services you're providing, either in terms of being able to refer people on for more specialists. I think Malika's shared the links to our website, but obviously got the checklist there. We've also, just to quickly pick up on this, one of these items actually is around where people are booking their own flights. We also see that being a problem. So where people book their own flights, maybe they're paid by bank transfer, or they've made mistakes in the visas and permits. We've produced a kind of short guide on how to do that, just to kind of, I guess, again, transfer some of that learning. So we're just trying to get that translated at the moment for people and get that shared with other organisations. That's kind of a key risk for people. So yeah, you've got links in the chat there, haven't you? So nothing else for me. So if anyone's got any more questions, obviously you're really welcome to contact us via the website or Twitter, or however you would like to do that, and we'd be happy to kind of discuss any clients that you've got you need kind of individual support, or what kind of cases that you might have in mind in relation to this, or follow up in any way that you want, really. Are we able to support clients that haven't had legal advice yet? Yes, it depends what they need. So we often have inquiries from people who haven't found legal advice yet, and I guess we would signpost legal services, and we would obviously share the resources with them to kind of, I guess, share kind of the point of what we're showing today is to kind of share that information earlier. We have had clients, we've had that really ongoing relationship from when they first made that inquiry to us about finding legal advice and making the application to kind of right through to when their families have arrived. But obviously, because we can't support with that legal part of that application, it would be signposting or kind of offers of support with costs once they have that legal advice in place, rather than. And that question about national registers for legal aid, I have no idea, and I'm sorry, that's really not my area. But just to note that you can't apply for family reunion until you have the refugee status.
Great. I'm not seeing any more questions, so Amy, pretty much up to you if you have anything else you wanted to say.
No, that's everything for me. Like I say, I'm happy for people to follow up if they want to.
Thanks, everyone. Please do fill out the feedback form linked in the chat, and stay tuned for a follow-up email with all of the amazing resources that Amy shared in today's session. Good night.
Thank you everyone for coming and your interest in family reunion. It's great that you kind of come and find out more today.